people joining us. Okay, well, good afternoon. This is the June 1st, 2021 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission, and I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's start with introductions of the commissioners. I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect and I'm nominated by the American Institute of Architects. Next up, we have Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Gassman. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
Thanks, Graham.
Sorry, I had to find mute there, or unmute rather. I'm Graham Johnson, Preservation Project Manager nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I am nominated by the community at large.
Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
And Jen.
I'm Jen Capetto. I'm Landmark Preservation staff.
Great. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have 3 meeting records up for approval, the May 12th, 14th, and 18th. So did all of the commissioners have time to review those in advance? Any comments? And if not, would someone like to try a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the meeting minutes from May 12th, May 14th, and May 18th of 2021.
Thank you, Brad.
I'll second.
Thank you, Graham. All right, then I will call for the question. Brad.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. Meeting records are approved. Okay, so up next, we like to reserve time at the beginning of every meeting for public comments. This public comment period is not for public comments on any of the projects that we're going to review that are on today's agenda. It's just to discuss preservation matters in general. So could we get this slide up that shows the public comment process? Thank you.
Sorry, my bad.
No problem. I like to look at this to remember exactly what the instructions are. So if you're joining us by phone, you will need to email landmark@denvergov.org if you'd like to make a public comment either now or for one of the projects on review later. Please let us know in that email what your name is, your phone number, and what you'd like to speak on. That way we can unmute you when the time comes. If you're joining via computer, anytime we open a public comment period, go ahead and use the hand raise function and we'll call on you. So public comments are up to 2 minutes each. Is there anyone with their hand raised or any emails we've received for public
Hands
comment?
raised. And the only person who is here from on the phone, which is looking through our email, we don't have any emails. The person who's here by phone is an applicant. So.
Okay, and we do have a Landmark staff member at the Wellington Web Building as well. I assume there's no one who's come in.
Nope, there's no one here.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. All right, and I see Nate has joined us, so I think that's perfect timing and we can keep rolling. So let's move into the consent agenda then. So we have 3 items on the consent agenda today. Are there any recusals required for this, Gary?
I don't know if it's a recusal. I don't think it is, but I need to do full disclosure. I was hired by the Paddington Station building owner in 2019 to do a building condition assessment. It wasn't a full assessment. It dealt mostly with the modern addition. And then more recently, one of the board members for the school informed me that they had acquired additional land adjacent to the site, which is the, I think, the subject of the zone lot amendment. We did not discuss the zone lot amendment. She just told me that they acquired property. So if that's ground for recusal, I will recuse myself, but I don't think so.
And Nate, maybe you can chime in. I think it's typically if you feel you can make a fair and impartial judgment that you don't need to recuse. Is that correct?
Regarding this issue, I believe I can.
Yes, that is correct. And so I think I'm comfortable with, you know, Gary's disclosure, and if he can be fair and impartial in this matter, then we can proceed.
Great. All right. Thanks, Gary. And if there are no other disclosures required, are there any comments on consent agenda items? Sorry, comments is not the right word. Are there any questions for staff or any applications that any commissioners feel need to be pulled off of consent today? Anne?
Hi, I have a question about that the same application, 1301 Quebec Street, and maybe it's just a really simple clarification, but the staff report says that the application is to combine 2 zone lots into one. It was very unclear to me what zone lots were specifically being referenced.
For sure. And Jen, can you advance forward to the slides so I can just show these really quickly? So Paddington Station is an L-shaped zone lot currently. So it's this existing zone lot that includes the historic building and the addition that Gary referenced. And the new zone lot is, or the existing second zone lot is this zone lot with the house on it, which is 1339 Quebec Street. And so that will all be combined into one large square zone lot. And that's the next slide if you want to advance.
Is that clear?
Thank you. That is clear. Thank you.
Great. All right. If there's no other questions, who would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I will make the motion.
Thanks, Graham.
You bet. I will move to approve consent agenda items 2021-COA-230 at 343 Cherokee Street, 2021-ZLAM-059 at 1301 Quebec Street, and 2018-TAXC-011 at 3140 West 22nd Avenue.
Great. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thanks, Julie. And I will call for the vote. Brad?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So if you are joining us today for one of the consent agenda projects, your project has been approved and you can feel free to hop off the call. Okay, next up, we're going to move into our design review projects. The process is up on the screen right now. So I'll go ahead and announce each project. Once the project is announced, staff will introduce it and provide their recommendations. After that time, we will have the applicant present, and the applicant has up to 10 minutes. All of our interaction or all of our discussion with the applicant needs to happen during those 10 minutes. We won't have a time period where we'll go back after public comments. So just a note to any applicants on the line, make sure to get everything in that first 10-minute round. After the applicant's presentation, we will open it up for public comment. And as we discussed earlier, if you're joining us via computer, use the hand raise button. In Zoom, it's along the bottom of your screen. And if you're joining us via your phone, please email landmark@denvergov.org in advance if you would like to provide a public comment and let us know what project you would like to comment on. Okay, after public comments, the commission will move into deliberation and we will vote on the project. So knowing that's the process, we'll go ahead and get started. The first project on our agenda today is 2021-COA-234, and it's 1115 Acoma Street, the Evans School. And Brittany, I believe this is your project, so go ahead.
Callie, I'm gonna just jump in real quick before Brittany starts. I do need to recuse myself from this one because we have been part of the pre-construction efforts here.
Gotcha. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you.
All right. So will someone switch Graham?
Yep, I am moving Graham officially to, let me find him, to a attendee so that he cannot hear or he can hear and see you guys, but cannot, you cannot see or hear him and he cannot influence the vote.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay, looks like Graham has been moved, so I will begin. So this is for a phase 1 mass form and context review for an addition and alterations to the Evans School. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new rear addition to Denver Landmark number 303, which is the Evans School building. The applicant is requesting a 2-step review process to best coordinate review between the Landmark Preservation Commission, the city's site development plan review process as this is going through the SDP process, and the National Park Service for tax credits. For the phase 1 mass form and context review, the commission will evaluate the placement and massing of the proposed addition, the proposed opening alterations to the Evans School, demolition of 2 roof chimneys, and alterations to the site. In the phase 2 review, the commission will evaluate materials proposed for the addition, materials proposed for the new openings, and additional sitescape elements. So the Evans School was designed by Denver architect David W. Dryden and was built in 1904. It served as a model for other public schools in the Denver School District. And the application for designation states that is one of the few remaining public buildings in the Golden Triangle neighborhood and remains the only building in the neighborhood representing the City Beautiful era and describes it as a showpiece of colonial revival architecture. The Evans School is designated for its history, architecture, and geography, and it was designated as a Denver landmark in 2001. However, it was put on the state and national register much earlier than it was designated as a Denver landmark. So this is the front of the Evans School that fronts onto Acoma Street. So the applicant is proposing some site work to the site, which includes removal of the non-historic fence, which was reviewed and approved by the Landmark Preservation Commission. However, the historic site will remain intact. At the corner along 11th and the alley, the applicant is proposing to create a site triangle that is required into the historic site wall, and then also add a ADA ramp onto the site, which you can see here in this proposal. Much of the lawn will be converted into hardscape to allow for activation of this space. So that will include a new patio space along 11th, additional hardscaping along Acoma Street, and a new fountain in front of the primary entrance to the Evans School. Additional details on all that will be provided in the phase 2, but the applicant did want to get initial feedback on alterations to these podiums, as landmark staff feel that as this building is part of the City Beautiful movement, preserving that podium and the views of the Evans School is a pretty significant element of the design. However, we do not have concerns over the site triangle or the ADA ramp that is being added in the rear, as you can see here in this image. So this is the existing basement plan and the proposed basement plan. Again, the application will include an addition at the rear of the structure. This is a 2-story addition, and this addition will have a minimal footprint that is kind of occupying space at the rear of the building that is currently mechanical yards. And the addition is subordinate in terms of footprint and placement to the historic Evans School. So we'll just move on to the the first floor plan. So again, you can see that placement of that addition. In addition to the addition, the applicant is also proposing some new entries into the Evans School on the north and south elevation, as well as the primary elevation onto Acoma Street. And the reason for these new entrances is because the space is going to be divided up on the ground floor to be activated for the public. So along the south elevation, there will be 2 new entrances that are proposed for spaces at the front and rear of the building. And these are separate spaces. So these separate entrances are required. And then along the north, 2 new entrances in total. And then on the primary elevation, there is going to be some new entrances as well, but that's better shown in the elevation. So we'll just move on. So this is the existing second floor plan. The existing second floor has a historic auditorium space that will be retained. And then again, that new proposed 2-story addition at the rear, which is occupying that mechanical space. The applicant is also proposing to open up blind windows on the primary elevation. And that is being done because the space again is being divided up into new uses that will need these new openings, as you can see here on the floor plan. Historically, behind those blind openings was the chalkboard space, but now they will be smaller spaces above in which they are requiring new openings. So on the 3rd floor, historically on the roof of the theater, it was a gymnasium space that was used by the Evans School. The applicant is proposing to keep that 3rd floor gymnasium space open, as you can see here in this proposal. And then that's will maintain that historic fencing that is on the 3rd floor of the gymnasium space, and that will be behind a new screen wall for the proposed activated use that will be on the roof of the theater space, as you can see here. Right now, the applicant is showing as it might be a pool space, but it is intended to be open space. At the attic, the applicant is also proposing to activate the attic space. So therefore, the applicant is proposing a new set of clear-story windows at the rear of the building that will allow additional light into that attic space without having to alter the front primary facade or the wings of the south and north of the Evans building. This will also have a terrace to it that you can see on this attic floor plan. And then here in the next plan, you can see that proposed clear-story structure that is proposed. So this is, again, separate from the addition that is 2 stories in height, and this is just a new clear-story attic window structure that is proposed. So this will include demolition of the roof structure. 13.6% of the roof is proposed for demolition. And that includes 2 historic chimneys, which you can see on the primary slope and then the north slope. These chimneys are not highly visible from the public right-of-way and aren't significant character-defining features of the building, so staff weren't concerned about the demolition of those chimney structures. And then in terms of the roof demolition, it is located at the rear. It is only 13.6% total demolition. And again, it's to accommodate a new clear story to allow for the activation of the attic space. And then it will also include 2 skylights, which you can see in plan here on the roof at the rear of the structure along the alley. So this is the front elevation, and this is what is proposed for demolition of the front of the structure. In total, there is 7.4% demolition of the total exterior walls proposed, and that includes opening all of these blind windows that you can see here. Again, these were historically where the chalkboards were located, but as the spaces will be divided up into new uses, the applicant is requesting additional openings on the front primary facade. So they will be in the blind window locations, and the applicant is proposing to preserve the decorative brickwork that is in these openings. However, Landmark staff feel that could be shown a little bit better in the application materials just to confirm that that will be preserved. And then 2 new door openings are proposed on the front facade as well. You can see those at the ground floor. And then an additional opening is proposed on the south wing's north elevation, which I will show you in a different slide. But that is also on the front facade, and that is intending to mimic the north elevation's historic maintenance entry opening that is located on the north wing south elevation, as those 2 wings project slightly. Here you can see those chimneys that are proposed for demolition. Again, those are not very visible from the public right of way, so we didn't have concern over the demolition of those chimneys. So here you can see that how those alterations will affect the front facade of the building. The applicant is proposing a simplified 1/1 window for the second and third floor for the new openings in those blind window openings. On the ground floor, they are proposing to mimic the windows that are on the north wing. So it will be a similar window that is a arched window opening with divided lights and a single light below. Here you can see those new proposed doors. Those are intended to have compatibility with the adjacent windows. So you'll have an arched transom with the divided light and then a door below. Again, we'll look at the specifics of those materials in the phase 2, but the opening of these blind windows is a pretty significant element of this application. So the applicant did want to show what they were proposing for those openings at an early stage to get commission comments on those alterations. Here is the west elevation. So the applicant is proposing to demolish 2 non-historic site walls at the rear of the building to accommodate the addition. They will add 4 new windows on the second floor. Landmark staff were not concerned about the addition of these 4 new windows because they are on a rear elevation, and our guidelines do recommend alterations and new openings on secondary elevations. You can also see where those skylights will be located and that clear story window. I do want to point out that this boiler flue on the rear will remain intact, and Landmark staff feel that this is a pretty significant element of the Evans School, as the Evans School was known for its mechanical innovation and its innovative use of a boiler system. So that's a very character defining feature of the building, and that will remain intact. Pretty minimal penetrations into the west elevation just to allow connection between the existing building and the proposed new addition. And those are primarily located at openings that will just be enlarged to accommodate that connection between the 2. So here is the proposed addition. Again, it is a 2-story structure. And while we will be looking at the materials in the phase 2, it is proposed to have some brick and metal materials to provide a distinction between the original structure and the primary structure. There will be an elevator and stair tower that extends above that 2-story height. This is of a lower profile than the primary roof ridge, but it is a little bit taller than the wings height, but again, it's minimally visible from the public right of way, and staff didn't have major concerns over those elevator and stair additions as they are placed at the rear and provide accessibility to the building. As you can see in this elevation, the historic railing will remain on the auditorium's roofing, and then there will be a new metal panel to provide an ADA and code required railing for that new terrace that is proposed on that historic gymnasium space on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor will largely be preserved with the windows left intact, and then you can see that new clear story window that is proposed at the attic level with those skylights. So here's the north elevation. This will have 2 existing windows converted into 2 doors. Again, to allow access into the interior space, which will be open up to the public and be used as a public ground floor space. Minimal demolition on the rear of the building to allow connection to the primary structure. This is also showing the south elevation of the north elevation of the south wing wall, which will be demolished to accommodate a new door. And this is intended to match the historic maintenance entry on the north wing of the structure. So that will be a new door that is introduced onto the primary facade. Landmark staff didn't have a lot of concern about this opening, as it is on a kind of interior facade that is on the primary facade, but we feel like it's pretty compatible. We do have some concerns about the new entrances introduced on all of the elevations that are primary. So that includes the south and primary elevation, as our guidelines do talk about not enlarging openings to do that. However, we feel the way the applicant has gone about this is very compatible, and will reactivate the Evans School, which has been underutilized for several years. So this is just the proposed north elevation, similar to the front elevation, where those doors have been designed to be compatible with the adjacent windows. So again, that arched opening with the divided light transom, and then the door below. And then the new door on the south wing, north elevation, will match that of the historic maintenance door. This is the south elevation. This will have 4 new doors total introduced. And again, these are because these are separate, intended to be separate spaces, and are code required egress entry doors. So these doors, again, have been designed to be similar to the adjacent windows, but will introduce 2 new openings on the south facade, which is a street fronting facade. Similar to the north elevation, same design for the doors. So I'll just move along there. So here are some renderings of the proposed project. You can see that much of the site has been converted into hardscaping, with just a little bit of lawn preserved at the front of the building. We are not very concerned about the site being converted into hardscape elements. However, we are concerned about what that entails with additional pergola structures or umbrellas or things like that. So we do want to be cognizant of what the site alterations are proposed, because we do feel strongly that maintaining views into this building is very significant and very much a part of its city beautiful character. So that is just something to keep in mind as the commission is reviewing this application. And here is a rendering of the proposed rear addition. So you can again see that is 2 stories in height, with those taller elevator towers, and then that clear story window that will be in the attic of the structure. Generally speaking, we are recommending approval of this application. as we feel that the phase 1 mass form and context is compatible with the Evans School historic character defining features and the surrounding historic context. There are a few things we would like to be shown a little bit better in the phase 2 details, such as how those brick detailing will be preserved around the front elevation, but we didn't make that a condition, as that can be clarified easily in the phase 2 submittal. And again, while our guidelines do not recommend new openings on primary facades, we feel that the applicant has done it in a very compatible way and in a way that will reactivate the Evans School.
Thank you, Brittany. Are there any questions for staff? And maybe this is a question for the applicant, but I was just glancing back through the application and I can't seem to find, was there a landscape plan, like a site plan that just shows all the alterations, or are the renderings the best?
There is, so that would be on page, let me flip through the application here.
Because I see their survey.
Yeah, so
I see their block plan.
Mm-hmm. So page G0.4 is showing all those site alterations that are proposed. There's,
oh, thank you. I just flipped right over that one. I just flipped back through. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's page 29 of the PDF packet.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
No. I'm going to switch over the presentation so you'll see screen changing in a second.
Okay, great. And has the applicant been promoted? We could promote the applicant. And once the presentation is pulled up, you can go ahead and get started. Please start with your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10 minutes.
Good afternoon. Are we ready to start?
I think so, Joe.
Okay, sorry. Well, good afternoon. I'm Joe Vostries with City Street Investors. On behalf of my partners at City Street and our joint venture partners, Jerry and Fred Glick, we're really pleased to be presenting this adaptive reuse project to you. As with all of our projects, such as Denver Union Station and the Tiers McFarland House that you recently approved, this one began with a deep dive into the needs and desires of the Golden Triangle community. We held focus groups, we did surveys, and in all collected information from hundreds of residents, business owners, workers, and other stakeholders to inform a vision for the property. The plan you're seeing today is the embodiment of that work and delivers to the Golden Triangle neighborhood the uses and characteristics that they asked for. As you know, this property has been vacant for 47 years, since 1974. So it's no understatement that the community is very, very excited to see this magnificent old building brought back to life with a wide variety of public uses and amenities that will give the neighborhood a center of gravity. At Denver Union Station, we envisioned the Great Hall as Denver's living room. Here, we envision creating the Golden Triangle's front porch, a public place for neighbors, visitors, and workers to gather and enjoy each other's company. The adaptive reuse of the property after lying fallow for 47 years is a very ambitious and monumentally expensive undertaking. We have poured everything that we learned that was successful from the Denver Union Station project into it. The adaptations we're seeking are essential for two reasons. First, without them, we cannot deliver to the community the uses and experiences that they want and desire. And second, for the long-term financial sustainability of the project to ensure that this fabulous piece of Denver's history can be beautifully maintained for the long term as an amenity for the community. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kevin Stevenson from Boss Architecture representing the design team.
Thanks, Joe. And you can see me now, I assume.
Yep.
Thanks, Brittany, too, for going through all the detail. That'll make allow us to stay at a little higher level. And I'll skip through a couple of the descriptions that Joe just included. But to begin, we, Boss Architecture and Kimberlin Architecture, are honored to be selected architects for this once-in-a-lifetime project. It's honestly an amazing opportunity for us, and it's an honor that we take very, very seriously. So the ownership, as Joe said, is also the exact perfect fit as a client for the Evans School Adaptive Reuse, as evidenced by their role in the redevelopment and operation of Union Station. We've witnessed firsthand this client envision, curate, and ultimately manifest what is arguably Denver's most successful adaptive reuse project in history, Union Station. And we're currently collaborating with them on the exact same process at the Evans School, as Joe mentioned. Joe gave a good example of the project description, so I'll tell you the reason that we're here today. It's that in order for this project to be successful and more importantly, function properly, we need to ask for 4 categories of adaptations to this beautiful building. It's one thing to design a beautiful space, and what for that space to truly be successful, it also needs to function beautifully. And I think we can do that with this project. So our first ask, and if you could switch to the second slide. Our first ask is the reactivation of the podium. Why we need this? We see the podium as the life force of the project. It will function as the welcome mat, becoming the magnetic energy that attracts community and patrons in and links the historic asset to the surrounding neighborhood and city. The podium will create the necessary permeability from street to building. It will function as a place to dine, read, relax, and socialize. It will host parties of all walks, weddings, events, and a composition of activities throughout the day, across the season, and spanning the year. How our proposed solution complies? Well, during its life as a school, the Evans Podium was always activated, and it was always an active space. We are simply proposing to return this to an active use. We are complying by maintaining visibility to the Evans School, by minimizing alterations and new permanent site features, and by being sensitive to the historic importance of the podium and of the Evans School. Our second ask is for new openings and modified existing openings. New doors and windows on the east facade, new doors on the south and north facades, and new windows on the west alley facade. Why do we need this? Again, required permeability. This permeability is essential to attracting patrons. It's also essential to making this building accessible, both literally and figuratively. And from a serviceability and operations perspective, there is a functional necessity for these proposed openings. In order for this project to be viable, Evans must communicate seamlessly and effortlessly with the podium. How our proposed solution complies? Because the answer comes from within the building itself. The proposed modifications utilize the most respectful and lightest touch, maintaining existing openings, architectural rhythms, historic patterns, and proportions already present in the Evans School. Again, this exact method was successfully achieved at Union Station Plaza, and we are simply repeating that for you. You could switch to the next slide. Our third ask is the west-facing alley addition. Why we need this? The addition becomes a necessary conduit for the building's systems and vertical circulation that are required in our modern times and to meet current code requirements. The historic fabric of the existing building will be preserved by doing these additions and by limiting the modifications to the historic interiors. Within those additions will be things like kitchens, elevators, back of house functions, exhaust shafts, makeup air, storage, and trash, among other uses. How our proposed solution complies. The form of the addition is located at the rear alley side of the building, subordinate in scale and mass, and of its place and time. While respecting and relating to the materiality of the historic Evans School, the addition is set back from the north and south facades. It uses a material and plane change to clearly delineate where it touches the existing walls, and it respects the datum of the original building. It also assumes the original footprint width and form of the flanking wheel rooms. Those wheel rooms have been replaced over time by outdated mechanical equipment and masonry screens. Switch to slide four, please. Our fourth ask is modifying the central section of the rear alley side roof. Why we need this? We're proposing to activate the incredible attic volume of the Evans School as a critical element to the project's viability. This space will be programmed as hotel suites, spa, fitness, a speakeasy function, most of which require daylight and egress. How our proposed solution complies. The recessed dormer is being proposed as a negative reduction versus an additive addition, sort of carving into the building, and is strategically located between two wings of the existing roof form along the rear alley side of the building. Because of the proposed location, the modification is not visible from the public right-of-way, and furthermore, will be entirely concealed from view by the new Evans West development. This is a very subordinate move to locate these utilitarian functions on this historic building. Slide 5, please. In closing, we've taken great strides to preserve the character defining features throughout this project, and emphatically request the board's support and approval of our application and each of the requested adaptations, as all of them play a pivotal role in giving this exceptional building a second life, which is what we all want. With our planning and your approval, this building can have an even longer period of success and set the bar for future adaptive reuse projects in Denver and beyond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Perfect timing. All right. And I'm not sure. I don't think we got the addresses of the people who spoke. We just need that for the record.
Sure. Mine's 620 Ivy Street, Denver 80220. And it's Kevin Stevenson.
Thank you, Kevin.
And for Joe Vostries, it's 425 Syracuse Street, Denver, Colorado 80230.
Great. Thank you, Joe. All right. Are there any questions that commissioners have for the applicants? Nothing?
Kelly, I have a couple questions. This is Brad here. I just want to make sure I'm completely understanding just a couple of the areas. So on the back side, the clear story section, it looks, if I'm reading this right, it's really bookend between the two vertical elements where the elevators are, and then that's a little flat roof section that just carves into it. It's not the roof coming down over to be a little flat roof section that's just framed by the two vertical elements.
Yeah, I'll try to explain that. The two elevator shafts are bookending that modification. What we're doing is we're removing a section of roof back up the slope, then inserting a vertical, call it curtain wall, that clerestory that Brittany described, and a horizontal deck surface. So we're sort of removing a triangle, if you will, in section of that roof, so that, as I was saying, it becomes a negative into the building rather than an added dormer or an added structure. So we're sort of carving in to create that vertical plane of light and access to views from that attic roof.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions? No? All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments for this project? And just as a reminder for all the attendees, if you have a public comment and you're joining us via computer, use the hand raise button.
I don't see any hands raised and no one's on the phone anymore.
No one's on the phone. That was my next question. Great.
No hands raised.
Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't any public comments, we'll go ahead and move into deliberation. Brittany, I assume, do you have any recap?
I think I said in my presentation that the fence will be removed. That's inaccurate. It will remain as part
Gotcha.
of it.
Okay.
That's it.
Great. All right, let's move into deliberation. What did the commissioners think? Brad, what were your thoughts?
I think I was trying to look at this very closely. I think they've done a really nice job of, doing everything we kind of talk about is putting the addition on the back side of the building. It does feel very subordinate to me. I think the way the two vertical elements are kind of tucked in around those roof elements really help to hide it. So I thought that was very successful from a massing standpoint and scale standpoint as well, and it does feel subordinate. Looking at all the window additions, I think that there's, some openings on the main facades, which I know we talked quite a bit about, but I think that they all make sense. And there is something that is already going on there. So I think that as long as they're developed in a way that you understand that, I think the blind windows on the second, third, and fourth floor that were added, those windows were a little bit different than the rest of the windows throughout the building. So I think that's a good indication that something is there that's a little different. So that feels really appropriate. And I think if that same level of thought is brought to some of the other openings as well, that can be successful. And, the building is going to read all the wonderful historic elements, and you're always going to know that there's something else going on there. So it's not trying to mimic history, essentially. So I think they've done a really nice job, and I'm supportive of the project.
Great, thanks. I agree with what you said. I'm really excited to see this building activated again. And I think that the addition is definitely subordinate. And I agree with you and your assessment on the new openings. I think it's not like they're damaging any character defining elements. They're kind of they're maintaining the historic patterns and rhythm and proportions with the new opening location. So I think in that way, they were very sensitive to the existing building. So I personally felt that met our guidelines and allows for that continued use. So I found that to be appropriate as well. Anne, what did you think?
Well, I thought Brad did a very good job of summarizing, and I think it's particularly nice that the addition on the back actually sort of returns the classical plan, which had gotten a little bit fuzzy, I think, in some of the other additions. And so I think it really strengthens the building. I have one small, maybe just friendly comment, which has to do with the openings, the small openings on the, I guess, north and south on the sides that are just being cut in. And I know that this is mass form and context, but I worry a little bit. Let's see, I think it's on sheet, you can get to A3.2C. I think you can see one of them. I worry a little bit about them looking a little bit too much like a false sense of history, because I agree, I think it's very sensitively done that the new openings that are being opened up, the fenestration is not exactly the same. And as I said, we're doing mass form and context, but I might suggest that maybe those two openings, these are the little ones that are being cut in, could be a little bit less referential. But I think it's a great project and really well done. I think Brad totally nailed it.
Great. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Gary.
I agree with what Ann's concern. I mean, the number of openings that are being altered is potentially a concern, but the ones that I'm most concerned about are the 2 new door openings where there was no opening before. And the detailing of that is going to be critical as to that the detailing be compatible, but that they also be not mistaken as original openings. So how that subtlety is managed in the detail application is going to be pretty important for me. I'm also a little concerned about the alterations to the podium. And I'm wondering, and the concern has to do with the reduction in the area of turf. And I'm wondering if some of the areas that are proposed for pavers could be, that concern could be addressed by using a turf paver rather than a solid paver. But I guess we really need to look at it in the detailed submission just to see how the podium is treated so that it's sensitive to the building's original setting. I'm not opposed to converting turf to pavers, but it just needs to be done in a very sensitive manner, and the reduction of turf is a little bit of a concern to me.
Julie, I see you nodding your head. You agree with that? Do you have anything else to add?
I do agree with Gary on that. That was a little bit concerning to me. I am very excited about this project, and really excited that the podium will be going back to its historic use. I think that's, it's a great comment. I was glad he said that. I thought that was true. I think that's terrific, but I am also a little bit worried about that. But I think for today, I just am really excited about this project, and that's about all I have to say at this point.
Great. Well, it sounds like we're all in agreement. A few friendly comments for the applicant to think about for the design details submission. But as far as the mass form and context goes, I think it sounds like we're in agreement with the staff that it meets the guidelines. So if there are no further comments, who's going to make the motion? Yeah, Brad.
Kelly, I'll make the motion. I move to approve application number 2021-COA-234 for the addition and alterations, phase 1 mass form and context review at 1115 Acoma Street, the Evans School Building, per design guidelines 2.14, 2.52, 2.57, 3.1 through 3.4, 3.6, 3.7, 3.11, 3.12, 3.53, character defining features for the Evans School Building, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Brad. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I will second that.
Thank you, Julie. Then I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. And I believe we need to bring Graham back since he had recused himself from that project.
Yep, Emily's doing that.
Great. And I'll just mention while you're doing that, that I'm gonna have to turn off my video for a few minutes, but I'm here and I can see and hear you. So with that, I'll open up the next project, which is 2021-COA-231 at 2662 Curtis Street. So Jesse, go for it.
All right. So here's 2662 Curtis Street. It was constructed in 1885 and is a contributing building to the Curtis Park B Historic District. The building is located at the corner of Curtis and 27th Street. The applicant is requesting to restore and make some alterations to the existing structure. Not clicking over. Jen?
Yeah, weird. I don't know why it's doing that. There you go. Oh. I'm trying to move the mouse too. So there you go. Should be able to click that little button. There you go.
Okay, great. Moving on. So the applicant is requesting to strip the paint off the existing historic brick cladding and stone foundation. In addition to removing the paint, the applicant is proposing to restore the woodwork on the gable ends of the house. In addition to the applicant is proposing to restore the ground floor windows on the house. Staff would like to note that Landmark does not typically review restoration work, but wanted to note this as it is included in their application and just wanted you guys to have eyes on it. So the applicant is proposing to repair and alter the front two-story porch. The applicant will be proposing to repair and reinstall a missing railing and install a new newel post to match the existing newel post at the first floor level. So here you can see the existing first floor level of that porch, the missing newel post, and then the newel post, or excuse me, the railing that will be reinstalled, and then the existing newel post that will be matched on the other side of the porch. At the second floor level, the porch, the applicant is requesting to remove a non-historic second floor porch and construct a new second floor level on the existing porch. The current second floor level measures 3 foot 2 inches by 7 foot 10 1/4 inch. The current second floor porch was designed so that it does not drain properly, and it's caused severe moisture damage and rot over time. The applicant is proposing to remove the non-historic second floor porch and construct a new porch in its place. So here you can see that they call it the bathtub effect, where water just collects and it's rotted out the floor. And you can also see kind of the outlines for the proposed porch on the house. Okay, so the new porch will measure 6 feet 3 7/8 inch by 10 feet 10 feet and 1/4 inch, and will be centered on the existing upper story door. There are existing ghosting marks and nail heads that do provide clear indication of what the historic porch footprint looked like. And it does show that it did not bump out past, or excuse me, extend past the gable front bump out at the front of the house. So you can see here circled in red in the left photograph, a nail head, and then a line on the other side where the porch originally sat. In addition to the ghosting marks, Sanborn maps show that the historic footprint of the front porch did not extend past the gable front bump out, but really just sat right in that bump out area or the recessed area and aligned with the bump out. So the new porch will feature an octagonal edge shingle to match the octagonal shingles in the gable end of the house. I realize that these are kind of rendered a little oddly, but they will match the octagonal shingles that are in the gable end of the bump out. A new 36-inch high guardrail will be installed reusing existing balusters, adding a bullseye block at the band at the base of the rail and space between the rail and the porch floor to allow for drainage, so we don't get that bathtub effect again. The new second floor porch will extend past the gable front bump out, as you can see in this elevation. And they are pulling from the existing materials on the house. So you can see in the upper photo, the bullseye on the existing bullseye corner blocks on the porch. And you can see that octagonal shingle in the gable end, as well as a baluster that was maintained from the previous porch. So here are some detailed drawings showing the proposed second floor porch. You can clearly see the railing and the bullseye details and baluster details for the porch. So pictured here is the existing side porch conditions. Currently, this porch is sitting on grade, so it's rotted over time. Some of the balusters are deteriorated, and the base of the columns are deteriorated. So the applicant will be repairing the porch on the northeast side of the house. The existing rotted porch floor will be replaced with a concrete foundation, 2x4 treated sleepers, and a tongue and groove pressure treated wood floor to match the existing. The applicant will be maintaining the existing porch roof and scrolled brackets, but will be installing new turned wood columns to closely match the existing columns on the house. So the house previously had 3 chimneys. You can see those chimneys in these 3 photographs. One chimney on the side of the house is a high style chimney and is intact. Another chimney on the west side of the house is on the 2-story portion of the house and is still relatively intact, but needs to be repointed. Finally, a 3rd chimney is located on the rear 1-story portion of the house, and that has been removed. The applicant is requesting to reconstruct those chimneys. They will be basing the design of the 1-story the chimney on the 1-story portion of the house on the less high style chimney on the back of the 2-story portion of the house. Oops. And then finally, the applicant did outline that they would be replacing the roof. They have not determined which roof color they will be going with. Staff would like to note that this can go through our quick permit process, which is an administrative review. And once they have made the determination for a final color, we can do that review, but we wanted to note it here in this presentation as they included it in their application. So staff is recommending approval with conditions of this application, with the condition that the existing, the proposed 2-story porch match the fit within the ghosting marks of the historic porch, not to extend past the gable front bump out. And this is per guidelines 2.13 and 2.35.
Thanks, Jesse. Are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right, can we promote the applicant? And once the applicant is promoted, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Jesse, could you find like a picture to put up instead of this for the moment? Awesome, thanks.
And has Wayne Thrash, the owner, been promoted?
Hello?
Oh, there's Wayne, great.
Oh, hi.
You first, Wayne.
Okay, hi. I'm Wayne Thrash. My spouse and I are co-owners of this property. And first, I want to thank you, LPC staff and commission members, for your really important work in helping preserve what remains of Denver's historic architecture and neighborhoods. I'll leave it to Ozzie Friedrich, my architect, to provide you with the details of the project, but I want to give you a little of the backstory. My spouse and I bought this house 25 years ago. I had lived in Denver for 15 years and had never ventured into what at the time was considered the most dangerous part of town. Our realtor brought us here to look at something we could buy on our meager budget, and we couldn't believe what an incredibly beautiful old house we could afford here. We immediately fell in love with the house and very quickly fell in love with the neighborhood and all of its beautiful old houses and wide streets. And we discovered the great community of urban pioneers who at the time had been fighting for more than 20 years already to save the neighborhood by banding together to help each other restore houses and to secure landmark protection for them. We quickly joined that effort, as well as joining what neighbors lovingly call the Feet First Club, meaning we're only leaving the neighborhood feet first after we die. We lived in this house for 8 years and researched and learned everything we could about it. Many of the houses here had been converted to apartments or boarding rooms in the 30s and 40s. This one became 4 apartments. The house's original carriage house had been demolished and 3 small row houses were built on the rear portion of the property somewhere around 1905, and that part was later sold off. As a result of this, when we bought the house, the only place to park was on the street, and there was little workshop or storage space. We didn't care. The house itself was just so beautiful and had such great potential. We now own 3 houses in Curtis Park. This one, our home, which is a half block away, and a Victorian bungalow on Arapahoe Street that I fell in love with and spent 13 years preserving and restoring, and will someday downsize and retire to. Historic Denver did a feature story on that one in its quarterly publication when it was finished. This house was Zone B8 when we bought it, which allowed for commercial use. As my career and my private practice as a psychiatric nurse practitioner evolved, we decided to find another house close by to make our home, and that I would spend the remainder of my career using this house as my office and lease out individual rooms in it for compatible professional use. I've done extensive work restoring the interior. Examples are that I restored all the upstairs windows to work with ropes and the original pulleys. I found and salvaged old wavy glass for the windows where the glass had been replaced. I was able to completely restore the staircase by replicating pieces from the still intact staircase in the sister house, which is a block away. I learned to faux grain woodwork from a master preservationist and restored the original grain painted woodwork. We're finally in a financial position to do the restoration of the exterior that the house deserves. I've walked the streets of Curtis Park and studied every house that has original elements remaining now for 25 years. My point to you is that from the moment I first walked in the front door of this house, I've been committed to preserving and restoring it, and I still am. I want the restoration to be as true to the original house as possible. Ozzie?
Okay, great, thanks, Wayne. So I'll focus, so I'm Ozzie Friedrich, 528 West First Avenue with Radix Design. And Wayne and I have been working together on this for quite a while. A lot of thought and research has gone into this to bring it to you today. So I'll focus my thoughts on the proposed alteration to the upper floor porch. This is an interestingly complicated landmark. We have a wonderful historic structure that has respectful but replicative alterations from outside the period of significance. And in our case, what we want to do is to fix elements of that replicative alteration to make it more functional, safer, and closer to what we believe was originally there. Going into the detail of our submittal package, we believe we've demonstrated that first, a walkout at the upper floor originally existed at 2662 Curtis. Second, that the dimensions of the walkout were different and larger than the currently existing one. And that three, a larger upper story walkout is 100% consistent with the pattern found throughout the rest of the Curtis Park Historic District. So we believe our proposed approach is really consistent with the guidelines, especially 2.35C, which talks about maintaining the overall composition, and 2.36C, which does note that a more decorative design may be appropriate if decorative porches appear on comparable structures in the context. Our context is highly decorative. In this case, we have an existing non-historic but decorative porch that we were trying to match. And so we've used modest decorative elements on our proposal, not only to reflect the context, but to allow us to continue to use the original balusters. And I believe we would be happy to proceed under staff's proposed conditional approval if the commission agrees. The one thing we would want to do would be to clarify the language in the motion when it talks about not going past the gable front bump out. I understand that as meaning not going past it in the side-by-side direction, but we would be allowed to go past it in the front to back direction, which is really critical to the proposal, because right now with the porch as built, you can't really stand there without hitting your head on the gutter. Hopefully we're on the same page with staff's recommendation there. And I would just say we're very excited to proceed with the restoration of this wonderful structure as a whole. And it's been a privilege to work with Wayne on it with his level of commitment to this house.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicants? Yeah, Anne.
Hi, this is Anne. I have a question. I'm looking at this elevation, and can you tell me if the balusters on the walkout are directly in line with the main structure of the porch below? That's the way it's the way it looks from the drawing. Do they line up?
Do you mean the newel posts?
Yeah, did they go like this?
That was the intent of this design, yes, that the newel post at the corners would align with the posts below.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. All right, thank you for your time. Are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time.
Yep, Keith is on. So let's see. All right, Keith, you can unmute whenever you're ready.
Hi, Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, Curtis Park Design Review Chair. We did work with the applicant. We have submitted a letter of support on this restoration of this porch and the alterations. On the second story, it is very apparent and also very common for the porches that do have a second story for them to go beyond the bump out gable from a front to back. And I agree with the architect, and we are supportive of the front to back to go beyond the bump out of the bay, and that the width itself be in line with the bay. And that is what is typical and what is found on the other houses that they have shown in their application. But we are very much in support of it going front to back and enlarging the area on the second level. Staff has approved, the commission has approved on new construction just recently, other types of porches like this with the second story and having that seating area above that. And it is very typical and common of the district. And it would be a wonderful restoration of this porch as to what it was, as we see with others in the district. So we are in support of this. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Keith. Are there any other public comments?
Yep, Sue is here as well. All right, Sue, you are unmuted, or you can unmute when you're ready.
Sue Glassmacher, 1037 29th Street. This is one of our old style preservationists in the neighborhood who does extremely good work. And I thought the application was very good and thorough at explaining everything and why it exists, why he wants to do the work. And I was pleased with the staff report also. So I would urge the commission to follow staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments?
No other hands raised.
All right. Yeah, Jesse, can you clarify what the intent was? Yeah, thanks.
Right. So staff's intent was not to comment on the depth of the porch not exceeding the bump out. We are fine with that. We feel like that is appropriate and is clearly shown in the footprints of the Sanborn maps. Staff would like that railing to stay within the inset and not extend past onto the wall where the bump out is. Because the Sanborn map does clearly show that that footprint stays within the recessed portion of, or the hipped roof recessed portion of the building. and it doesn't extend over into the gable front bump out. Additionally, those ghosting marks that were provided in the application packet do show that that railing was inset a little bit away from the bump out wall. So it was a little bit narrower than what is currently proposed. That's the only thing that staff is making a recommendation on, that the width matched the existing ghosting marks on the house, not to extend over onto the bump out, the gable front bump out. So we didn't have any comment on the depth. We felt the depth was appropriate.
Thanks. And Ozzy, does that answer your question? Was there, and you're comfortable with that? Okay.
I believe so. Wayne, we're comfortable with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just curious before we move into deliberation. All right, great. Then thank you for your time and for the public comments as well. I think the commission will move into deliberation now. So what was everybody's thoughts? Julie, what did you think?
I like it.
Yeah. Short, quick, to the point.
Yeah, no, I like it. I was happy about the clarification that that Josie made, because I was kind of wondering about that myself. But
that was going to be my next question. So do you
just to clarify, does it meet the guidelines, Julie? It's not whether you like it or not.
You're very true. You know, I actually do think I think staff did a nice job of making sure that it meets the guidelines, and as generally staff does. So I am willing to support this. I think it's going to be a really nice, and I love the idea that they're restoring. I know that's hard to do. So that's basically. And, you know, when Jesse clarified the front to back, you know, the width thing, I was happy to support this. I do believe it meets our guidelines. Thank you for the reminder, Jen.
Thanks. Gary, did you have something to add?
Well, my concern is about the roof design. I mean, the way the proposed porch extends forward of the facade of the building, and so some overframing of the existing porch roof is required, and then that overframing has to be covered with something, and they're proposing to cover it with octagonal wood shingles. But I really think the way the proposed upper porch sits on the roof of the lower porch is really an awkward and not particularly historically compatible situation. And so I'm wondering if the existing porch roof isn't a later alteration. So I'm just concerned, you know, that so much effort is going into restoring the character and of this wonderful building, and to have kind of a very awkward transition on top of that porch roof in order to accommodate the larger upper porch, I think is going to produce a disappointing effect. And so, you know, there's a compatibility issue here that that has to do with character that I think is problematic, and I don't have a solution. I'm just concerned about it. One way to mitigate it to some degree is to reduce the depth of the porch somewhat, because that would then reduce the height of that kind of fascia panel that's got the new shingles on it. I'm just, I'm just troubled by the detailing of how the new porch sits on top of the existing roof. And that's all I can say. I mean, I just think it's a very awkward kind of appearance, and given the high character of the rest of the building, I think it's going to look kind of odd. And so I guess I'm thinking about voting for denial and having the applicant try to figure that transition out in a better way than what's been shown on this drawing, on these drawings.
Did anyone else have concerns about that? That kind of vertical portion covered in siding? Yeah, Jesse?
I don't have a concern. I have a question just for clarification. One, I wanted to point out that I know that the existing porch is non-historic, but it does have a shingle edge on it currently. So just wanted to point that out. And two, on page 14 and 15, there are several example porches of two-story porches in this neighborhood. Gary, are you talking about maybe a more simple banding that ties in from a hip roof, like on page 15 or 14 of the application, the second picture from the left? It's a tan building with green detailing. It looks like that porch, the lower portion of the roof is a hip form that comes up into the deck of the porch. Or would you like to see something more like the other two-story roofed porches in the packet that show kind of the hipped roof going in as part of the base of the porch? There is a detail on the page 14. There's at the bottom of the page, the center image, that porch appears to have a detail similar to what they're proposing at the base of that porch, where there's like a small apron on the first floor level of porch roof, and then it kind of jumps up to a railing portion for the second floor level with shingling detail.
If you look at page 30, you can see that house straight on too, so you can see a kind of a better elevation type photograph of it.
You know, my instinct was that if the upper porch was historically larger than the current porch, that the roof would have had more of a hip. It wouldn't have been just a simple shed roof. It would have been more of a hip roof of some sort, or maybe even a hip roof with a very steep slope, so it looked kind of like a mansard roof. You know, if you're referring to page 14, the lower right-hand corner is, I think, something that would be more in character with the rest of the building. I might be too fussy about this, but I'm just concerned that, you know, if this is not executed very well, the transition is going to look awkward and kind of out of place with the rest of the intact Victorian design.
I just wanted clarification. That's helpful. Thank you.
Gary, I'll chime in here too. I think, you know, looking at page 17, kind of just the front elevation that's showing the overframe and then the shed roof or the shingled roof, that is wrapping the corner of the building, you know, which with that transition now something that we're considering as a revision here. I think I would tend to agree. I think you know, a traditional two-story porch a lot of times does have that almost mansard shape to it that you mentioned. Initially, it caught my attention just looking at the section because the framing details kind of show it floating. I understand that it wouldn't just float like that. But I think that I would agree here with your assessment that, you know, maybe studying that transition or that roof style, you know, with something more akin to the examples that are found on pages 14 and 15 that are a single roof pitch, but a steeper one. I appreciate you making that comment.
Anne, what were your thoughts about that?
Well, I agree that there's something unresolved. I think where I've slightly gotten stuck is between, again, looking on page 14, the lower structure, and this is what I asked before, and the upper newel posts are always aligned. they're not offset. And that is true in every single one of the ones we're looking at. So there's something that I can't resolve about what we're seeing historically and the ghosting on the ghosting on the original structure. And I don't quite understand how you balance those two, because as I said, when you're looking at page 14, you don't see anything offset. And to me, if it wasn't for the ghosting, I would say that by all means, you should line up the structure and the newel posts, which would indicate the larger footprint. And then I think I totally appreciate what Gary is bringing up about sort of the awkwardness of the shape of the roof. But there seem to be so many good examples in the neighborhood of, I mean, this is not, what the applicants are proposing is not something completely out of the box. It's something that's actually, there are many, many versions of it. So there seem to be a number of different ways of resolving it. I think Graham and Gary have both talked about that. But as I said, my big question is I don't understand how you resolve the difference between the ghosting and what we're seeing in the examples.
Jesse, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to point out, while there are many examples of the post aligning from the first to second floor, those are typically for the two-story roofed structures. So there's a roof at the second floor level. If you look at the two-story porches without roofs, because there's kind of that angled mansard, those corner posts don't always align on those porches.
Thank you. Well, I agree with what everybody has said. I mean, I think overall the design meets the guidelines. And Gary, frankly, when I looked at the elevation the first time, I tended to agree with you, but after looking at the examples, especially that one that Jesse pointed out to on page 14, that's again on page, I think 30, I guess that kind of convinced me that there are so many porches in the neighborhood that do have like shingles applied, and that one specifically has the condition where it comes into the porch roof. And so after I saw that, it didn't bother me as much. I at least felt that, you know, there was justification within the neighborhood and the historic context to support that. So I'm kind of fine either way. With that said, we don't know what the historic porch looked like. So if the applicant wanted to change what that material was so that it's not, you know, a shingle coming into the roof like that, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But based on the examples in the application, I'm fine with what's proposed. But that's just me. So we've heard
Kelly,
from, yeah, thank you.
This is Brad. I was going to chime in. I believe that this meets the guidelines, and I agree with staff's recommendation on this. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. And when I saw that image on page 30, that was what kind of convinced me. And then going through the guidelines, like I said, I do believe it meets the guidelines.
Great. Well, I see me and Brad and Julie all shaking our heads at that comment. And yeah.
Brad, when you say you think it meets the guidelines, are you saying that you don't believe it needs to follow staff's recommendation to pull back the footprint? That's not required?
I think that is, and what we heard from Ozzy as well, is I think that is a good approach to actually pull that back. And I'm not concerned as much about the alignment because I think pulling that upper baluster in is fine. So I agree with staff's recommendation.
I would agree with that. Gary, what did you have to say?
Well, you know, I agree that that with the staff's recommendation, it meets the guidelines, but the guidelines don't address the nature of where detailing looks kind of awkward. In other words, guidelines don't deal with good design or bad design. They deal with, strictly speaking. So, you know, I can support this. I just do need to say I'm concerned about, you know, given what a gem this building is, what is being attempted here is to kind of restore something without having any documentation of what was there originally. So what is they're going to end up with is some conjecture. It's just difficult, but I'm going to vote for it in support of the staff's recommendation. But I'm still concerned about how well the execution has to be for this not to be kind of a blemish on the rest of the gem, so to speak.
Yes, Jesse?
Would it be easy to add in a condition that they restudy the shingled portion of the porch to make it be fit more in line with existing examples in the district? And that could come back to staff for review. Would that make everyone more comfortable?
That could help. The way the sort of vertical walls that are required, the way they're detailed with trim and shingles could go a long ways in improving the character.
I kind of worry about making a condition that's that vague. We've received feedback from the attorneys in the past that conditions need to be very clear and easy to execute. And I feel like a condition like that might leave up, because as most of us pointed out, there's a lot of examples in the district. So who knows what that solution ends up being. So personally, I'd recommend keeping the condition as written. Yeah.
If you needed something more specific, I heard quite a bit of conversation about having a more mansard form at that lower base level, which would be in keeping with other examples in the district. And it would also help with drainage or runoff.
So let's leave the proposed motion as is. And I think there's been enough conversation that if the applicant wants to restudy this, they can. And if that requires a resubmittal, they can. But like Kelly said, that adding a vague condition is probably not helpful. So I think we talked enough about it to alert them to the fact that their work may not be done.
I agree with you, Gary. I think this allows the applicant to determine what the design is. I don't think we need to be prescriptive in a certain roof style when we don't know what the original porch roof looked like. So I think, you know, let's let them work out the design. And if they want to keep it, you know, this is, as Gary said, this is a detailing issue. If they feel comfortable that this can be executed properly in the field to get the level of quality that they want, then that's, you know, that's their decision.
I think too, for the record, just kudos to the owner for taking all these steps in the right direction to, you know, make a beautiful home more beautiful. So
I agree. On that note, that's a good note to end on, Graham. On that note, who's going to make a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Julie. I'll make the motion. I move to conditionally approve application number 2021-COA-231 for the restoration and alteration work at 2662 Curtis Street as per design guidelines 2.13 and 2.35. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the condition that the new second-story porch feature a footprint that fits the ghosting marks of the historic porch and does not extend past the gable front bump out.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thanks, Brad. I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is conditionally approved. Next on our design review agenda today is project number 2021-COA-203 at 2631 Curtis Street. So Abby, go ahead and start.
Hey, good afternoon. So yes, we have 2631 Curtis. So this is a brick Italian residence constructed circa 1886. It's the red brick residence there you see in the middle of the photograph. The applicant is proposing to construct a second-story addition on top of an existing rear one-story addition. Sanborn maps indicate that the rear addition was constructed by 1893. So here are some illustrations of the project. So you can see that the addition will be located completely to the rear of the existing structure. So there's not going to be any visibility of the addition looking straight on. It's tucked behind. The existing single-story rear addition is irregular in form. And you can see here that it does not extend the entire width of the original residence. So the new addition will be regular in form and will project over the one-story addition, as well as extending about 5 feet beyond the addition to the rear. The new addition will then be supported by timber posts where it projects over the existing. The proposed addition is contemporary in design and clad in vertically oriented tongue and groove oak siding. The windows and doors will be fiberglass. They are also contemporary in design, with a combination of thin vertical windows and horizontal windows proposed, as well as a sliding glass door at the rear. The applicant has worked closely with staff in developing the design to meet the design guidelines and has also met with the RNO. The addition, as originally proposed, was taller and wider than the historic residence, which made it much more visible. Both staff and the RNO had concerns with this and its subordinates and compatibility, but the applicant has now revised the design to tuck behind the original structure, which staff feels is much more successful. So here are some photos just showing the existing conditions at the rear. So you can see there the kind of irregular partial width existing one-story addition and an existing deck and porch that are located at the rear. So the applicant is proposing to demolish this existing kind of side and rear deck and this porch. Those will be removed. And then they are also proposing to put in one new window at the rear, which will be, if you see this photo here, furthest to the left on this blank wall here, they're going to put in a small window. Sorry, there's always a delay trying to advance the slides. Let's see, there it goes. So you can see here, left is the existing site plan. The right is the proposed. So you can see this existing side deck that will be demolished. So in some ways that will be kind of, you're going to getting rid of a visible side deck and then having instead an addition that just goes to the rear. And then you can see to the right, the hash marked shows what the footprint of the new addition will be as it projects over the existing first floor addition. Okay, waiting to see if it will let me. There it goes, finally. So, okay, here we have the existing rear and then the proposed. So just to show the existing conditions at the rear, this is the proposed, located entirely behind the house. And it will be designed to have a minimal impact on the existing structure. You can see here there's limited demolition. So fits our guidelines as far as being, as reversible as possible in its construction and its impact on the original structure. And you can see the largest openings, the sliding glass door is located entirely to the rear, where that will not have any visibility from the street. Okay, so here we have the side elevations. So you can see one side is mostly blank with just a narrow window towards the rear. The other side has a couple narrow windows as well as a more traditionally sized window. I think most of these windows are either really small to limit visibility or pushed towards the rear where they will have less visibility. Okay, so I have a final summary here with some more conceptual designs here so you can get an idea of the overall massing and appearance as well as visibility from the street. Though certainly, standing on the sidewalk, you would have less visibility than you will in this image, since this is kind of from the perspective of the adjacent house. So staff is recommending approval. Staff finds the new addition to be a compatible contemporary design that's clearly distinguishable from the original structure while remaining subordinate to the original structure. Due to the location of the addition, it will have minimal visual impact on the existing structure. It will be placed at the rear and located entirely behind the original structure. Staff feel the addition is both compatible and differentiated. The change in material and contemporary design clearly distinguish the addition as new construction, while the location at the rear keeps it from competing with the original structure. The Curtis Park RNO has submitted comments on the design, which were forwarded to you. The RNO is supportive of the placement and mass of the addition, but do have concerns with the contemporary window sizes and design, as well as with the vertical siding. The RNO feels that these do not sufficiently relate to the original structure or to the district. The RNO suggests revision to the window proportions and siding, recommending a change to a standing seam metal potentially. Staff find that the windows as proposed are compatible with a contemporary design as designed. So we feel like they fit with this design, and that overall it's a simple and restrained design that doesn't detract from the historic character. And we feel that due to the location of the addition at the rear of the house, with a setback of more than 50 feet from the sidewalk, that though you'll get glimpses to the side, the windows aren't going to have a high visibility. The applicant is proposing to clad the addition with vertical wood tongue and groove siding. While vertically oriented siding is not characteristic of the Curtis Park District, wood is a traditional material, and the texture and scale of the siding will be compatible with the district. Staff find that the wood siding proposed blends contemporary design with a traditional material. Staff find this more appropriate than standing seam metal siding would be. Standing seam metal siding was historically used as a roofing material within the Curtis Park District, but it's not a traditional siding material. And as a siding material, metal has a more industrial feel than wood siding, which does not seem compatible with an Italianate residence. So that's it. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, Brad.
I have one question. Is there any bulk plane issues with the addition?
I do not believe so. Let me see. I think one of the, you can see it. Yeah, you can see, oh wait, it looks like, yeah, sorry, I should have, this will need just this corner. So you can see here in the upper left, the existing house has a bulk plane, like doesn't meet the bulk plane in the upper left. And so the addition will have that same issue, that corner, just a little bit of the corner there of the addition will also penetrate into the bulk plane. So thank you so much for catching that. And if the commission decides that this is compatible, then also you should recommend an administrative adjustment for bulk plane for that small section of that rear corner there, and then I'll get exact measurements for that for the officially submitting for administrative adjustment, but you could go ahead and recommend that today.
Any other questions? No? All right, is the applicant present and can we promote them?
He's been moved over.
Great, so when you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hey guys, thanks for fitting us in today. My name is Derek Soul. I'm an architect at West Standard. I've been working with Carrie and Mark, the owners of the property now, for about a year. I know them through my kid. They've been going to school together for the past several years. So I'm helping them out with this effort here. So they do have this awesome Victorian or Italianate house from the Victorian era. And they need to expand to kind of meet their modern lifestyle. So they're proposing a new primary bedroom, bathroom, and closet on the rear of the property, just so that they can, store their clothes and work from home and provide their kids with separate rooms on the second level. And then in doing so, there's very client-driven design. They have a very modern palette they like. So I just tried to follow their lead with that. And like Abigail mentioned, we did have another iteration of this design that did have a section that projected out the side and was somewhat visible from the street. So after meeting with the R&O and taking all of their comments into consideration, we felt that even though we kind of had like a soft approval, it would be better to bring that rear addition into line with the existing structure. So that's what we've done here. Also, there are a number of things with the design that we're challenged with and trying to deal with as well. That rear addition, the rear one-story addition that is existing now, the foundations aren't very great for supporting anything on. So what we're trying to do is you'll see that there's a change in level on the second level so that there is like nothing bearing on that existing addition on the back. We're hoping to use the posts shown 2 to 4 with a helical pier foundation that would avoid, providing any bearing on that rear part of the building. And that is about it really in terms of the challenges other than the constraints by zoning and the LPC. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions for the applicant? Yeah.
Hi, this is Anne. Can you tell me what's the difference? What's the dimensional difference between the top of the existing cornice and the top of your cornice, which is basically how much lower is it?
Oh, it's only about like 8 inches right now.
I'm looking at your rendering. What we're seeing is 8 inches. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can get you a better dimension here if I open the drawings. Sorry.
While we're waiting for that, are there any other questions?
I can share my screen if I need to. Oh, it's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't share the screen.
If you look at page 8, and page 8 of the drawings gives somewhat of a close-up that you can see a little bit more.
Page 8 of the drawings, because I have the drawings, okay. Page
yeah,
8.
I got 6 inches from the top of the cornice to the top of that. It's not really a parapet, but it'd be like gravel stop flashing with our roof assembly.
And then one other, can I just ask you one other question? That's great. About how deep is the existing cornice? Just give me a guess.
Shoot, how am I showing it here? It's about 2 feet, I'd say 2 feet to 30 inches.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments for this project?
I'm sure there will be, but they haven't raised hands. There we go. Keith's got his hand up.
Great.
Whenever you're ready, you can unmute.
Hi, Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, Chair of the Design Review Committee for Curtis Park Neighbors. We do definitely appreciate that the applicant had recessed this in and brought it in, and definitely is much more in line with the primary structure. The height, as Anne has pointed out, is just being 6 inches, is not really that much lower than the original structure, and this does have an amazing cornice. It's one of the most amazing cornices found in the Curtis Park District. It has a reverse angle to it and great wood detail to it. And so that is definitely something to be considered. The vertical siding was based off of another house on 2800 block of Champa Street that was not approved by the commission. It was done as an early addition before the landmark designation had occurred for the area. And we really haven't approved that use of the vertical siding. We definitely more horizontal in nature. This structure has great horizontal banding. You see the great detail, the windows, everything on the side really relates to a horizontal element. And yes, part of the guidelines definitely do want an addition to be differentiated and of its time. We just feel because this has a side lot to it and that it is visible from the street, that it could be more compatible and not as stark with the vertical siding that is wood, and the use of the really narrow windows. Typically we do allow narrow windows when it's on a 25-foot lot and you don't see it from the street, and we're a little bit more lenient with that. But this one will be clearly visible because of the side lot next to it. And again, given the size of the windows of the house and how it relates more with the horizontal nature of it, the intense verticality of this definitely is a bit jarring. So, but overall, we definitely do oppose. Sure, thank you. We definitely feel like it fits as far as mass and scale.
Do we have any other public comments?
Yeah, Sue is on. Let's see. Thank you, Keith. There we go. Sue, you can unmute whenever you're ready.
Sue Glassmacher, 1037 29th Street, Curtis Park. This is interesting to me because it fits mass and scale. But I also think it's a deviation from what we have done in the past. Denver, I know you can do this as a high contrast in styles to differentiate the new addition. And I also realize that, you know, it's in the guidelines, the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. But Denver has always been more of a complement and blend, not copy or replicate, but complementary and blend approach, as opposed to the high contrast and using a totally different period and style on an addition. So I'd like to hear you discuss that. The other thing is that I hear over and over again this commission talk about mistaking it for new construction being mistaken for old. And that is very hard to do. And I think that your concern on that is more than the problem is, much more than the problem. So whenever I hear that, I think, wow, it's like you have so much more concern because it's so hard to build in the old style. It's really hard to look like old construction, original construction when it's new. So I'm always concerned when you say that. Other than that, I'd really like to hear you discuss the contrasting styles, which is, like I said, I think something new in your approach.
All right, your time is up. Thank you, Sue. Okay, any other public comments?
No other hands are raised.
Okay. Any recap? Nope. All right, then let's move into deliberation. And let's keep in mind the kind of comments that were proposed as we deliberate to talk about, you know, identifying new versus old, or using newer, more contemporary styles on additions rather than kind of replicating, if you will. So let's keep that in mind with our comments, and let's also address the siding and the windows. Those were brought up as well. So what did everybody think about this? Yeah, Gary.
I want to build on what Sue has said, because I think she started to talk about what my difficulties with this particular proposal are. It's true that additions need to differentiate, but they do need to be subordinate. And subordinate is not only a size consideration, I think it's also a design consideration. And I think that's one of the problems that I have with this proposal, is that the design is so strikingly complementary or contemporary, and the choice of materials as well, that it's not visually subordinate regardless of its size because of its character. And while it might be a very nice contemporary design, I don't think it's compatible with this very strongly detailed Italianate historic building. So I have it's not a mass problem, it's a design problem. And the design is not complementary and it's not subordinate because it is so strikingly different. So I don't think this does meet the guidelines.
Yeah,
I sort of had a different take. This is the most aggressively subordinate addition I think I've ever seen. And I just kept thinking it is aggressive. But as far as I can see, that I actually believe that it does a really great job of meeting the guidelines. The only one that I have a real issue with is guideline 3.2, which talks about respect. And I would have to say this addition shows really no respect, but I think that's the point of view that the applicant took. And in a way, I think that's fine. What would actually make this, to me, more respectful and slightly more subordinate is if they lowered the roof line so that it's some way related to one of the major horizontals of the cornice, because I think it goes, this addition really goes out of its way not to pick up on any detailing of the existing, which I think is fine. I think it's subordinate, but I think it would be much more respectful and tie in if at least in the roof level, it picked up that horizontal. But I think with that condition, I would be in full support of this application.
Thanks, Anne. So we have two opposite ends of the spectrum there. Where is everybody else falling? Brad?
I I'm falling in the Ann camp right now. And when Ann brought up the question about the cornice, I think that was something that felt a little unresolved as well, to help kind of distinguish the two. The other thing that came to mind is really the connection between the new and the old. And sometimes we see a more deliberate seam between the two. And I think if that was there, that would help with that transition a little bit better. And I think it would more strongly meet the guidelines, and that respect, guideline 3.2. So I think dropping the cornice line on the new building can help. And I think also having, if it was a metal seam or something there that helped kind of set up the new as it comes around, would help me get there. And then along those lines, I would go back to the bulk plane issue as well. And I think that if it met those guidelines, the respect of the existing character, I think I would be supportive of the bulk plane violation as well.
Thanks, Brad. I think that's a good comment. Graham, you had unmuted yourself previously. Did you have something to add?
I did. I think guideline 3.2 we've come back to. It's interesting. If you read the summary, it says design an addition to a historic structure to respect the character defining features of the district, the context, and the original structure, which is in its own way fairly descriptive. But then it goes on to talk about the addition being compatible with scale, massing, and rhythm of the historic structure, align eaves. We've talked about the cornices, retain appearance and orientation of a primary entrance, which hasn't been impacted here. Use materials that are of a similar color, texture, and scale to those in the context or the structure. I guess where I'm going is I feel like the summary of the guideline has a bend that leads towards this historic compatibility and not this extra contemporary approach. But then each of the more specific components broken down, I feel like it meets them in an atypical way, kind of like Ann said. And so frankly, I'm torn. I can see both sides of it. I'd be curious to hear what a few of the other commissioners say, because I think good points have been made all around. The one that I think clearly is different that Abby addressed as well is that the windows and doors are very contemporary, but it is a rear addition. And I know that we've approved some very contemporary rear additions in the past, a lot of times that will maybe, pay respect to just the overall gable end shape, or in this case, a terrace or a flat shape. And so personal preferences aside, I can see how an argument could be made that it does meet the majority of these guidelines, or as Abby argued that, some of these adjustments are in the back, out of public view, not affecting a primary facade. So I guess that's my 2 cents without restating too many things that have already been discussed.
Great. Julie, do you have any?
Yeah, so I'm on Team Graham. I'm really torn. I'm looking at the guidelines right now, and it's 3.2 A. I guess for me, first of all, kudos to Ann. I think aggressively subordinate is like the best. That's the phrase of the day. I love it. And that's I see where she's getting that, because it is aggressively different, and yet it is still subordinate. And I guess the word that's kind of tripping me up here is in 3.2A, the rhythm of the historic structure. And Keith mentioned that it was kind of jarring because it is so different from the very gentle Italianate, the side there. It is very gentle and easy on the eyes. And then boom, you've got that beautiful, very contemporary addition. So I am also torn. I'm torn. That's where I am right now.
Julie, I'm going to jump back in behind you and still being torn, but point to guideline 3.9. which is talking specifically about the, you know, compatible but differentiated, which is aggressively true in this case, as we've said. That one notes a subtle change in material, color, or plane to differentiate. And, you know, we've returned to the not so subtle nature of this. Maybe that's something to see what others think as well. And I know, you know, wood siding, again, being a traditional material, but vertical not being traditional. We're getting to the details on this one, rightfully so, but you know, that's a nuance, I guess, in our guidelines as well that maybe points to this question, the bigger question of radical versus not as radical.
I think everybody's made some really great comments. I was also a bit torn on it, but I think I'm in camp Anne. I think Anne, when you had that question about the cornice, I was like, oh, I know where you're going with this, and I agree. I think that just something feels a little off in the alignments there, but I do appreciate how the applicant has, although the window proportions are very different than the historic window proportions, they do align the sills. And so I think that there are a couple alignments, and if they brought that height down, it would respect the existing structure more and be more compatible in that way. I think I also agree with Brad, your comment about making some sort of kind of transition from the existing. Before you made that comment, I was actually looking at guideline 3.9 because I thought that's, you know, where they mention a shift in wall plane. Normally when we're looking at additions, we don't typically approve them when they're completely in alignment with the existing exterior face of the wall. But then I reread 3.9a and I realized we kind of have an and or in there. So it says use subtle changes in material, color, and or wall plane. And I was kind of thinking back, and a lot of times where we do require that shift is when, you know, it's a new brick addition on a existing brick house and such. So I guess I was kind of struggling with whether we're meeting that guideline or not with this proposed design, because those walls are just completely flush. The addition walls going back. So I think some sort of jog to indicate, you know, a transition between the historic home and the new addition may better respect that corner and how those brick belt courses wrap the corner. So I would support a condition to that effect. To kind of go back to a couple of public comments we got from Keith and Sue, because I think they're good ones. This is very contemporary, more contemporary than a lot of submittals we see. I think it's difficult, but it's difficult because it's such a gray area, but we do always want to identify these additions as new because that follows the Secretary of Interior standards and our guidelines. And obviously this is not going to be mistaken as historic, but to Sue's question, I think the reason that's so important is the everyday person isn't always going to be able to recognize between new and old, especially if they're seeing this from like just an angle walking by on a sidewalk. So I think I don't know if that clarifies what Sue was looking for, but I think that's the intent that we have those guidelines for, is to really be able to distinguish and tell the story of how these structures evolve over time. And I think this does that. I thought Abby's summary in the staff report was very clear, and I would support the vertical siding because it is a use of a material that we do approve, just used in a contemporary way. And since this is completely at the rear of the house, I think that's one of the reasons I'm supportive of such a contemporary design, because it's not going to detract from, I believe it's not going to detract from the historic home, since it is completely to the rear and set back so far. So those are my thoughts. So I think we've got, I've heard we have 3 people who are supportive with a couple conditions. We've got 1 person who feels it's not compatible, and we've got 2 people on the fence. Now, remember, since there's 6 of us, we need 5 people to, to pass a motion. So I'm wondering if we're getting to a consensus here, or if this requires any further discussion. Graham or Julie, are you still on the fence?
I think by being on the fence, I wouldn't want to obstruct progress here either. I can see the arguments and the validity, you know, as it sits in the comments made, I think, for some of the refinements. So I feel like I could be swayed towards an approval here.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm also leaning toward approval.
Okay, and I don't mean to.
No, I really appreciate some of Anne's comments and your comments about, you know, about the roof line and that kind of thing. And I think those comments could go a long way with the applicants. And I think it could be a really good addition. I'll vote for approval.
Okay, and I don't mean to preemptively make everyone vote. I just want to make sure that if we're moving forward, we're moving forward in a direction.
There's no way to vote in between. Yeah, there's no.
Yeah.
There's no.
Okay, so Anne brought up that idea of adding a condition about the roof height and alignment with the existing cornice. And then Brad, you brought up an idea for a condition about transitioning between the existing and the addition. Do we, does anybody come up with a draft here? Who's going to make the motion?
Madam Chair, I can make the motion, but I do have a question about the bulk plane issue, which is, do we need to address that? And oddly, I think it's possible that the bulk plane issue and the lowering of the roof, and I'm not really sure because I'm not sure how accurate the drawings are, that those two could resolve themselves depending on how that worked out. But how, I guess my question is, how do we want to address the bulk plane violation?
I'll just say one thing. Since you're asking for revisions to the roof and that may change the bulk plane, I could always, you know, potentially like bring just a bulk plane back on the consent agenda so that you could, you know, for you to review it potentially if you feel like you want to see that, you know, final detail of what the roof line is going to look like. You know, if you're okay approving it conditionally, but not okay yet doing the bulk plane, I could also do it that way.
That's fair. And it's not something that's called out in the applicant's presentation or dimensioned. So maybe, well, it looks like I am finding a dimension here, but it's not called out as a needing an administrative adjustment. On sheet A07. Looks like it's showing that it's 2 feet 5.5 inches above that bulk plane. So I'm sure it'll still need an administrative adjustment, but since that height could change, maybe we should leave it out. Thoughts?
Okay, then I can make a stab at this. Let's see how this goes. Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application number 2021-COA-203 for the addition to 2631 Curtis Street as per design guidelines 2.14, 3.2 to 3.4, 3.6 to 3.10, character defining features for the Curtis Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following 2 conditions. First, number 1, to lower the roof line to better match the cornice on the existing structure. And secondly, to provide a material transition between the addition and the existing property.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Brad. Any further comments on the motion? If not, I will call for the vote. All right, Brad.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Nay.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, so we have 5 votes in favor of the motion or in support of the motion and 1 opposed, and that was Gary. So the motion passes and the project is conditionally approved. All right, so we have 1 more project on our design review agenda today. It's project number 2021-LM Demo-213. It's actually 2 project numbers. It's also 2021-ZLAM-090, and it's for 2845 West 36th Avenue. Jesse, go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you. So this is 2845 West 36th Avenue, constructed in 1953, and it is a non-contributing building to the Potter Highlands Historic District. The applicant is requesting to demolish the existing non-contributing structure to make way for 2 new infill projects that will be reviewed by the LPC through the 2-step infill process at a later date. Staff would like to note that demolition of the existing structure cannot be finalized until a replacement plan is approved by the commission. And again, that will come to you at a later date. So this will be a proposal for conditional approval. And change the slide. Jen, oh, there it goes. Okay, just a little sleepy today. So in addition to demolishing the existing structure, the applicant is requesting to split the lot into 2 zone lots. The existing lot is 50 feet wide and 125 feet deep. Each of the new zone lots will be 25 feet wide and 125 feet deep, fitting with the typical zone lot sizes for this historic district. The property again is not contributing and can be demolished. However, a replacement plan must be approved prior to demolition per guidelines 2.55 and 30-66 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. The proposed zone lots fit the typical zone lot sizes in the historic district, meeting 30-6 5.5 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. Staff is recommending conditional approval of the application with the condition that a replacement plan be approved prior to demolition of the current structure per design guidelines 2.55 and chapter 30-66 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? No? All right, is the applicant present? Could we promote them? And when you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself. Please start with your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10 minutes.
She's been promoted. You will just need to unmute yourself. You're ready.
Hi, this is Nadine Garcia with the Debt Project Consulting. I'm here on the behalf of the owner who is proposing to split the existing lot into 2 25 by 125 lots to build 2 proposed single family dwellings, 1 single family on each proposed lot. As of right now, we do have an infill plan in progress. We are still working out the details, but unfortunately, you know, we really can't progress any further until we have your blessing to move forward with the zone lot amendment, and then we can move forward. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. Sorry.
No problem. Are there any questions for the applicant? No? All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments on this project?
There is no one on the call anymore.
Okay, there we go. No comments. So we'll move into deliberation. Commissioners, what did you think of this proposed zone lot amendment and demolition? Well, I guess I'll just jump in then. I would be supportive of this application. I agree with staff, and I think that the existing structure is not within the period of significance, and we've approved demolition of structures like that in the past in this neighborhood. So I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Julie. I believe you are correct, and I support staff's recommendation and the applicant's request.
Kelly, I'll jump in and agree. We've definitely approved these before. And I think under our current guidelines and the current historic district that it is outside. But I guess just for the record, and Gary was one who originally mentioned it, I think these 50s kind of mid-century infills are in their own way character defining, especially in having lived in the Potter Highlands for a number of years. They fit in the neighborhood a lot differently than new infill. And I just say that only as a friendly comment because I think at this point they don't meet the guidelines for otherwise applying an ordinance differently. But that's come up in the past, and I think it's just an interesting thought to keep on our minds as we look at them and think about future projects.
I see. Oh, Gary, yeah.
Well, I have a concern. I was looking at the end of the staff report. There's that sort of plan of the neighborhood. What my concern was, we're taking two 25-foot lots that are combined into a single zone lot, and we're subdividing them into 25-foot zone lots, which means down the road there's going to be two structures on this property. And how does that fit with the pattern of the neighborhood? And the general, and there's quite a bit of variety, but the general pattern of the neighborhood is that if you have narrower zone lots, they're not 25-foot wide, they're lot and a half. They're 37 and a half feet wide. And so what we will be looking at down the road are some very narrow buildings compared to the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood. And the question is that compatible? So we could approve this zone lot proposal or change and then end up denying potentially the design proposal because you can't put a compatible building in this neighborhood on a 25-foot lot because it's not typical in this neighborhood. So that's kind of like, there's a cart and a horse kind of problem here that that's just my concern. If you look at that image that was included in the staff report, there's lots of variety in zone lot widths, but very few that are 25 feet wide. And so I just like to talk about that some more.
Yeah, and Jesse, can you chime in in your review of the various zone lots in the neighborhood? What were the typical widths?
I mean, I can't speak to the typical widths. I think Gary did bring up a good point that there are varying widths. 25-foot wide lots are found in this district, so it's not atypical to find that. And it's really difficult to say whether or not you would approve something that goes there without having some kind of submittal drafted and sent in to staff for review. It is a buildable lot per zoning, both of those 25 foot wide lots. It would be up to the applicant to ensure that whatever infill that they propose for those 25 foot wide lots was compatible with the surrounding context per our our two-part infill process. So while it is kind of cart before the horse, as Gary said, we still have to allow the opportunity that these are buildable lots, and the applicant still has to make those infill fit within the context, and that infill will have to come to you guys for review at a final stage.
Thanks.
So I actually, when I was looking at this, noted that on the drawings, and I'm looking at sheet 1 of 1, there is a note in red which says the proposed lots are only large enough to construct the urban house building form. Is this the intent? Is this the intent of the zone lot amendment? The zone district allows for duplexes and tandem house building forms, but the proposed lots will only be large enough to accommodate the urban house form. And I read that and had no idea what it meant. And I'm not quite sure where, I mean, I understand what it means, but I'm not quite sure whose note it was. But I looked at it, and actually in the context of what Gary said, is you understand that you could have a duplex on that, which would still give you 2 dwelling units, and maybe be more in the character of the neighborhood. And somebody was actually, whoever put out this drawing and then left the note on, was clearly thinking in that direction. I mean, I guess I don't know whose note it was thinking in that direction. So thank you, Gary, because I was unclear why that note was there at all.
So just to give you a little background on our process, so it has to go through the zone lot amendment team before it comes to us for review. They have to make sure first and foremost that these are buildable lots, because if they are not buildable lots, of course, they can't split the zone lots. The urban house form refers to the zoning for this district. Any of those forms would be applicable for these zone lots. However, again, it has to go through landmark review, and we have to be the final approval for whatever goes back in place, and it would need to fit within the context.
And an urban house form is basically a single family detached residence. I'm pretty sure.
And just to cap it off, so if the LPC approves the split of the zone lots, they can finalize the zone lot split with the zone lot amendment team. However, they can't fully split the lots until the building is demolished, which means that they have to go through the infill process with us prior to that.
Thanks for clarifying. Gary, did that answer some of your questions?
Well, it answers my question. When I was, it answers my question.
Okay. All right, any other comments on this project or application? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, make the motion. Yes. I move to approve application number 2021-ZLAM-090 for the zone lot split at 2845 West 36th Avenue per chapter 30-6, parentheses 5.5 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report. And I actually read the bottom half of that, so I apologize. Let me start again here. I was on the right page, but the wrong half. I move to conditionally approve application number 2021-LM-Demo-213 for the demolition at 2845 West 36th Avenue, as per Design Guidelines 2.55, Chapter 30-6, Section 6 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following condition: that a replacement plan be approved prior to demolition of the current structure.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thanks, Brad. All right, I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously and the project or the application is conditionally approved.
And do we need to do a separate motion for the zone lot as well? So we did the demo, but then if we are going to split the zone lots, they're written as two.
Yes.
So I read the first one backwards. I did it out of order.
And I thought you did it so that you just read it at like in inverse order, but I got the sense you voted on it all together.
Then I will take that clarification as a friendly comment. I think that works, so I don't have to read it again, as long as everybody else agrees.
Yes.
Is that how you all interpreted it? Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jen.
Great. Are there any discussion or business items that need to be addressed, Jen?
There are none. Just a reminder to everyone that we're having instead of having a July 6th LPC meeting, you guys voted last November, December to move it to June 29th. So you have 3 meetings in June and 1 in July.
Good reminder, because I forgot. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I'll close the meeting.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.